Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Agent Advantage podcast. We are joined by Mr. Justin Ford today. What's going on, Justin?
Hey, thanks so much for having me, man. Just excited to be here and excited to this industry. I just love real estate, and anytime I have the opportunity to kind of share and talk about my story and talk about real estate, it's always an exciting thing. So thanks again for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm everyone who's listening knows that I'm big on collaboration. Even when I'm doing a deal, I don't feel like it's a combative thing. I think our industry is more collaborative, or at least we're better off when we're more collaborative than combative or competitive. So let's raise the bar together. Why don't you dig in, tell everybody, a little bit about yourself, your history, how you got into the business, and then we'll get into why we're here.
Yeah. So my name is Justin Ford. I am here in the Detroit, Michigan area. I've been within the industry for 16 years. I've been a broker for 8. Started off in the mortgage business back when I was 20. I think it was 22. So I've been in this industry pretty much my whole adult career. I was introduced to the mortgage side of things back in 2000. I think it was 2004, 2005, right before the crash. And I was working for a telemarketing firm, making phone calls for the cancer fund. I was raising money for the cancer fund, and I had a buddy who ran his own mortgage office. He's like, "Hey, man, you should come over here and make some phone calls for us." He says the refinance boom is crazy. I said, "Okay, great." So I worked my 9 to 5 at the cancer fund in the daytime, and then I went over to make calls for him, and I was setting like 7 to 10 refinance appointments every night. Within 2 weeks, I quit my day job and went full force into the mortgage business, started learning that side of things, and did really well. Within a few years, I was, making 6 figures really quick, living the high life. This was really my first all commission, a job, and was doing really great. And, before I knew it, I went from 6 figures to no figures pretty much overnight. My wife and I and our kids, we lost our house to bankruptcy, went through foreclosure, lost both of our cars to repossession. I mean, we really went through some hard times. And I always believed in building a business and being an entrepreneur. And so when I got a little taste of the commission side of things, I didn't want to go back to work in a real job, even though we basically lost everything. So I got into the short sale and the loan modification side of things and started doing that before I knew there was a loan modification or short sale, or else I would have went that route rather than going through foreclosure. And that started going really well. As you guys know, if you've been in the industry a while, pretty much everything was short sale or foreclosure, back in 2008, 29, and started doing that for a while. That was going really good. And then the industry shifted and things started to kind of get back to normal as far as, values increasing and stuff like that. So I ended up getting my real estate license, joining the #1 real estate team here in Michigan, and sold 100 homes my first year in the business, primarily based on prospecting and lead generation. And then from there, I was there for probably about 3 or 4 years, and then I started my own brokerage. So I was independent for about 4 years, and then back at the beginning of this year, I moved over to EXP.
Fantastic. All right, let's dig into that. 100. You just smacked me in the face. Did 100 homes my first year. So that's not a common occurrence. Okay, so let's dig into that a little bit. I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah. So, when I was introduced to the real estate industry itself, I saw that, on the mortgage side, I saw that real estate agents did really well for themselves. And so I thought, real estate was all about, just showing up and cashing the big commission checks. And the guy that I interviewed with, Jeff Glover, he's actually one of my mentors. He's with Keller Williams. He was on all the billboards and TV commercials and everything. And so I said, in order to be the best, you got to learn from the best. So I went and met with Jeff and interviewed for the job. Again, I thought I was just going to go in and be a real estate agent. He's like, "Justin," he says, "we do things a little bit different here." And he says, "Everybody that comes to these doors has to start out prospecting expireds and for sale by owners, minimum 90 to 120 days. You don't get to go meet with sellers. You don't get to meet with buyers. You sit on the phone 6 days a week and basically pound the pavement." And he says, "And oh, by the way, we're only going to pay you $1,000 a month draw that you're going to have to pay back." And I'm thinking, "Sheesh, he took the wind out of my sails." I mean, literally, I'm like, I thought I'm coming to, sell some big homes and make some big commission checks. And now I'm going back to being a telemarketer, right? And I thought those days were over. And so I Jeff said something to me that day though, Lord, that really spoke to me. And here's what he said. He says, Justin, I know this is going to feel like you're taking a step back, because I was, in the short sale and loan modification business. I owned the company, was doing really well, and had been self-employed, for a handful of years. And he's like, this is going to feel like you're eating humble pie, right? And so he says, but this is what he said. He says, but if you'll trust me, you'll follow the process that I teach. He says, you're going to see a lot of success in this industry. And so I left and I was discouraged. And, I went home and my mentor at the time, he kind of said, hey, how'd it go? And I said, it didn't go real well. I said, he wants me to be a telemarketer and he only wants me to pay me $1,000 a month. And so, and he said, but did you ask him for what you want? Right. And I said, well, no. He says, well, could you see yourself being successful there? I said, yeah. So I went back and I said, Jeff, I said, you know what? I'd love to come work for you, but I at least need $2,000 a month. We just had our fourth child. I mean, we got to at least be able to afford beans and rice, right? I said, on 1,000, we're not going to be able to afford much. So he's like, all right, I'll do 2,000 a month. So joined the team and basically had to go through a week-long training of prospecting for sale by owners and expireds, just watching these videos, learning the scripts, all this stuff. And it really got me fired up because I saw all of these agents like killing it, making so much money, just picking up the phone prospecting. And I always knew, when I was doing telemarketing or when I was doing the mortgages, I always had great success on the phone. So I'm like, I can do this. Go home for the weekend, all fired up. Monday comes around, they give me a desk, they give me a phone and some leads, and they say, go get it. So I'm like, all right, great. So I hop on the phones and I start making calls 45 minutes, and I'm like, this sucks. I said, I'm like, I am not a telemarketer. I'm a real estate agent, right? That's what I signed up for. And, it was like a coming to Jesus moment for me right then and there, because I remembered I was sitting at the desk and I stepped back and I said, I'm either going to quit, but if I quit, what do I have to go to, right? I have nothing else to go to. And I remember looking up on the wall, there was a sales board on the wall, and it showed all these listings and all these pendings and all these big commission checks. And I'm like, you know what? If this leads to that, I'm going to do this thing. And I made a decision in that moment to go all in and started really crushing it. So for 90 days, I was setting all types of appointments. I set my most in one day. I think it was 12 or 13 listing appointments I set in one day, calling for sale by owners and expireds. The only problem was I was handing them off to agents. I wasn't able to go out on those appointments. And so I was excited because after that 90 days was up and I knew I was transitioning into being an agent versus just an inside sales agent, I remember setting a goal, and it was in January of 2014. And we went to a Mike Ferry event, and I'm sitting at Mike Ferry's event, and I'm hearing all these amazing stories and, people that are just crushing it, calling, making all these calls. And he said, well, what is your goal for 2014? And I remember writing it down, just like literally in my little book. I said 100 homes sold, right? And so I came back to Michigan from this event, and I became an outside sales agent in February of 2014. I took 30 listings my first month in the business, took 33 listings my second month, had 9 pendings, took 100 listings in my first 6 months. And from my very first closing to 12 months later, I sold 100 homes.
That's amazing. Let's dig into some of those details. Now,
Yep.
I'm curious, you were on Jeff Glover's team. How many people were on the team at that time?
I think there's probably about 15, maybe 10 or 15 of us.
Okay. And did he run a system of inside sales, like full-time inside sales agents feeding the other agents, or was everybody in charge of generating their own business?
Yep. So there was always a handful of inside sales agents, and nobody could move, like nobody joined the company and moved right into being an agent. So it didn't matter if you were brand new like me at the time or you had experience, everybody had to go through this process. And so there was always a constant, transition of people coming in the door, learning the inside sales side and prospecting. And while you were at 90 to 120 days, every appointment that was set was going to the agents. So the system was everybody started as an inside sales associate, set appointments, turned them in, and they went to all of the other agents. And that's how the whole system continued. And I'm still connected to Jeff today, and so the system's still the same.
So when you're an ISA for those first 90 days and you're learning the ropes and you're handing off all those leads, are you getting like a bonus on anything that closes, or it's just straight like your
Yeah,
grand or $2,000 a month?
I think if I remember, it was 10% So you get 10% when it closed. The problem was half of that had to go and pay your drawback, right? So you really got 5%. And honestly, I mean, 5% is not much. I mean, it's nothing to, sneeze at, but, it got you through the 90 days, right?
Right.
And I think it was a test, who was really going to make it through this 90 days. And if you did, and you were successful, you'd become a great agent.
Gotcha. So the 90 days pass and you're starting day one
Day
for
one.
yourself within the team, but making calls
Yep.
for yourself, right?
Yep.
So was there any difference in mindset or feeling, or was it just, no, I'm prepared now. I went through the trenches and I'm good to go forward? Explain that whole process.
Yeah, for me, it was, again, so 90 days being on the phones and seeing, like, building the rapport with the seller, setting the appointment, but then handing it off. And like when I'd have an appointment in my hand, hanging it off, and I'm like, man, this is a slam dunk. And then the agent goes out there and doesn't get the listing. And then I'm like, well, what happened? So then I'd call, hey, it just wasn't a good fit with the agent. I'm like, now I'm frustrated. I'm like, man, I'm putting in all this work. I'm setting all these appointments, just for agents to not go out and get them, or the agent didn't show up to the appointment or something. And I'm like, oh, this is ridiculous. So
Yeah.
I think it kind of built this excitement, but this passion, for me, so that when there was a transition, I'm like, man, I'm going to go kill this thing. Because when you first start, you're like, you don't know what you don't know. But then when you're in it for 90 days and you're setting all these appointments and you see the agents that are getting the listings, putting up all these crazy numbers on the board, I'm like, man, I can't wait to eat good again, right? Because I was tired of just barely, eating scraps. And so when I actually transitioned, I mean, I liken it to a thoroughbred, right? Like, let's say you're at the Kentucky Derby, or you're at a horse race and you see those horses just sitting ready to go. That was me. And I was just like ready to go. So when the gate opened, I was gone. And again, and I didn't look back. I mean, I just went and made it happen. And I was excited that I could set my own appointments and then go out on the listing appointments. And so I think there wasn't really so much of a shift in my mindset because I was already prepared and ready to go. I think it was just being ready to be released into that role. And once I did, I mean, it was trial and error, right? Because at that time, nobody was coming out to help me on listings. I wasn't shadowing anybody, and I had enough confidence in myself and past sales experience that, all I need to know is the information and I can go do the rest.
Right. Now, I want to dig a little deeper into the systems and the follow-up and, all of that. Let's talk about, you learn the scripts, you learn the idea of dialing when you were in
Yep.
those first 90 days. Were you just hand dialing or were you using a system?
Yeah. So that first day when I almost threw in the towel, I was hand dialing. And that's why I'm like, man, this sucks. I'm not going to do this. And then I was introduced to the dialer that I still use today called Vulcan 7. And Vulcan 7 basically has all of the expireds and the for sale by owners built into the dialer. And so you would just kind of set your parameters, put your headset on, and dial. And so it would dial for you. It's a single dialer. It would dial for you. All their information would pop up if it was an expired or a for sale by owner. And yeah, I mean, I still use the dialer today. I've never used a different dialer. I love it.
Now, what kind of schedule did you have with your calling? And did you have certain numbers that you were trying to hit, whether that was personal goals or the team's goals for you?
Yeah. So every day, so when I was an inside sales associate, I would dial from 8 a.m. till about 6 p.m. And I always say, because I coach real estate agents in prospecting, and I always say the best time to call is between 8 a.m. and noon, and then 4 p.m. and 8 p.m., right? Because that's really where you're going to make the most connections. And so when I became an agent, even today, I typically block out 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Usually I'm calling my expireds and my for sale by owners from 8 a.m. probably till about 10 a.m. or 11 a.m., depending on how many there are. And then I usually do a half hour to an hour of lead follow-up. So I still block out that 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. To make calls. And the way that I was taught, and even the standard that I still set for myself and even teach our students, is for every 1 hour that you're on the phone, you should have 8 to 10 contacts. And the way that we define a contact is you're talking to a decision maker. And So they might, say, hey, you know what, I'm not interested. Thank you for calling, or they hang up on you. That's still a contact, right? You talk to, the decision maker, even though it didn't really, become anything. It's still a contact. And so for every 1 hour you call, it should be 8 to 10 contacts. And then when you get really good at prospecting, you should be able to set one appointment for every 10 people you talk to.
Wow, those are great numbers.
Yep. Yep. And that's like, I mean, that's experienced, right? When you've gone through and you've really kind of mastered it. Someone like myself who's been calling for 8 years, or somebody that has actually been prospecting for a while, that would usually be the standard. What we say for people that are just calling for the first time, and even the number we kind of set when we're teaching people is, for every 25 contacts, you should be able to set an appointment.
Okay. So that's a
Yep.
more reasonable number for people that are just getting into it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Now those are typically targeted at for sale by owner and expired, correct? As you
Yes,
were
sir.
mentioning.
Yep.
Did you ever do any other kind of calling, like circle prospecting or anything like that?
I just started doing circle prospecting, or just listed, just sold, over the last year or so. For me, it's been, and I even struggled for a while, even with my lead follow, because I would be setting so many appointments a day. Like for me, it was like, I don't need to go make just listed, just sold calls, or circle prospect, or door knock, or, even struggled for many years, even with lead follow up, because I'd be getting so much new business that it was hard to go get additional business. Right. So as I grew and matured in my career, and, hired a coach in the industry, and she kind of helped me look at my business and really try to create more leverage in my business, and be able to kind of add additional ways to generate business. That's when we started doing, more consistent lead follow-up, just listed, just sold, working on my database, tapping into my sphere of influence, things like that.
Great. And what would an approach be? I mean, when you're looking at for sale by owner and expireds, a lot of people for years, since Mike Ferry first came around,
Yeah.
even before, I've been harping on, call these people. They're already motivated.
Yep.
So when you're calling and talking to these leads, you're definitely not the only one talking to them, right?
No,
How
no,
do
not
you
at all.
how do you break through that mist, that haze of realtors that are kind of circling around every single lead?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I'll even take it back to when I was working for Jeff. I mean, at one point, I mean, I think we had 12 inside sales agents, and then we had all of the other agents. So there would probably be 20 of us calling, right? The same lead, to the point where, so someone would answer the phone, like, so I make the call, and they're like, this isn't another Jeff Glover agent, is it? Like, before they even say hello or anything. And so here's always my mindset, and it still is today. They haven't talked to Justin Ford yet. I don't care if they've talked to 100 agents. They haven't talked to me. And I truly believe, not from an arrogant standpoint or from a cocky standpoint, I still believe that I'm the number one agent that they're going to talk to today. And because of how I've learned how to communicate and learned how to listen, and I don't tie myself to the end result, so often I get people who will say, you know what, Justin, it was such a pleasure talking to you today. Everybody else I talked to today was just horrible, right? There were so many rude people, unprofessional, but there's something different about you, right? And I get that all the time. And the reason why I believe is because A, I really approach it from a professional standpoint. B, I'm not pushy, right? And C, I don't focus on the end result, right? I focus on the process, that if I show up and I do what I know works and I know I'm supposed to do, the results show up. But there's a mindset shift, I think, too. And for whoever's watching that either is prospecting or, wants to start, I expect mostly everybody to say no, right? And I'm not afraid of a no, right? Matter of fact, no's lead me to yeses, right? So the more no's I get, right, the closer I am to a yes. And so I don't get afraid when someone tells me no, right? I mean, I've even had people tell me to F off, go to hell. You're the scum of the earth. You're a bottom feeder. Go get a real job. You call me again, I'm coming up to your office to beat your ASS and all this stuff. And
Oh,
like,
wow.
and I share those recordings with my students just so they can, I say, you know what, guys, this is as bad as it gets right here. You should see the look on their face when they get some of these, these calls that I play. But it's like, I'm okay with that, right? Because I'm just looking for one or two people to say yes, right? So if I have to go through 10 no's to get a yes, I'm willing to do that. So it doesn't matter, to me, I don't care how many people are calling. I don't even think about that, right? When I call, I'm the only person they've talked to today. That's how I look at it. And if I do a great job and I add value and I make that connection, I'm going to get an appointment.
So can we talk about your approach to either a for sale by owner or expired, and
Yeah,
sort of like just walk people through what the dialogue kind of sounds like?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so what's great is you should never make calls unless you have scripts. And there's a lot of great scripts out there, right? There really is. And we started with the Mike Ferry system, and now I use the Glover U system. Jeff Glover was probably one of Mike Ferry's top students for many years, and even today he still talks about Mike and how big of a role he played. And so I use the Glover U script. So we use Glover U scripts and expired in for sale by owner. And so when I'm calling an expired listing, right? I mean, I just start off the call, and here's a little tidbit in the nugget is never say what company you're with, right? Because you don't want, if you're, because there's a lot of Keller Williams agents that call, right? And so you don't want to be another Keller Williams agent that's calling, because they tie you to the rest of them. So I just say, good morning, my name is Justin Ford, I'm a local realtor. I was calling about the home for sale, is it still available? Right? I say I'm a local realtor. I don't say I'm with Keller Williams. I don't say I'm with EXP. I don't say the company name. I just go right into it. They usually say, yeah, well, it's off the market, or yeah, it's still available, or no, it's not. I'll say, great. Hey, the reason for my call, I'm sure you're already aware of this. Your property came off the market as an expired listing this morning. I was just calling to see when you plan on interviewing the right agent for the job of helping you sell. So I go right into it, right? And, I think that sometimes people just try to get on the phones and wing it, or, they really don't know what to say. And I think you're setting yourself up for failure if you don't have a script. And what I learned very early on about scripts were, a script is a roadmap, right? With the series of questions that you're using to try to discover their motivation. And I love what Jeff Glover says. He says, selling is not telling, selling is asking questions, right? You're not calling them to sell them on how great of an agent you are or why they should use you. You're calling them to ask questions. And what I found is when you're asking questions, you're in control, and people want to talk, right? So when you ask questions, you let them talk. And, our script, real easy questions like, what do you think caused your home not to sell? You know, um, how did you happen to pick the last agent that you used? What did you like that they did best? What do you wish they would have done? You're asking a series of questions so that when they give you all of their information, right now, their motivation, now why their home didn't sell. Now what they're looking for. That's when you go in for the close. Hey, if I could show you a different strategy that we're using to help 10 to 15 people every month sell their home, and show you how we can help you, still sell your home and get down to Florida, before September, what would stop you from at least wanting to take a look at that if there's no cost or obligation to you?
And that usually, now my question for you, because a lot of people get hung up on this part right here,
Yep.
is they think, well, what is it that I'm doing so different than anybody else? If
Yep.
it's one thing if it's totally screwed up and people took cell phone shots instead of professional photography and all that those are
Which a
easy.
lot of them do. It's crazy how many agents do not hire a professional photographer.
I know that's a little bit sad,
Yeah,
but it makes our job easier.
it does. It sure does. Yep.
But what is it that you do if they're like, well, I don't know why it didn't sell, and you truly don't know why it didn't sell because it seemed to be priced right and it was marketed pretty well.
Yeah.
What is it? Just a mindset differentiation, or are you trying to really put something in there for them?
Yeah. So if let's just say you told me, hey, I don't really know what caused my home not to sell. I would say, Lauren, there's usually two things that cause a home not to sell. Number one is price. Number two is lack of exposure. And then I would say, for the 4 months that you were on the market, how many showings did you have? Right. And I want them to tell me, well, we only had 4 or 5 showings. Well, in my mind, in this market, you only had 4 or 5 showings in 4 months. There's definitely something wrong, right? Number two, hey, what was the agent you were working with doing to market and advertise your home? Well, I don't know. Well, then it wasn't much, because if they were doing right, if they had an extensive marketing plan and they were actually doing something to get the home sold, they would have definitely told them about that, right? And so then I'll say, hey, did you get any feedback, right? Did any of the agents that showed your home give any feedback? Well, no, they didn't. So what does that tell me? That tells me that the agent's not communicating with the client, right? So I'm asking all of these questions to really, like, again, build this close. And so, there, it comes down to price and exposure. You know this, right? Being in the industry, there's no real secret sauce or anything. Now, obviously, we extensively market online. We build a website for their home. We post it on social media. We're marketing, to different websites and stuff like that. But price is definitely a big thing, especially in this market, right? And so I always tell even people that are just now, starting to prospect that join our class, I'm like, in this market, there's not a lot of expireds because homes are selling for over asking price. But if a home does expire in this market, which we still see 10 to 15 to 20 in our market every day, it's either price or lack of exposure, or there's just some things that are wrong with that house that for whatever reason, the agent just didn't do a good job of setting the right expectation up front.
Do you get a lot of, especially in this market, if the house doesn't sell, well, I'm not going to give my house away. Like I want 2 million or whatever, because the house down the
Yeah,
street sold for 1.7 and my house is better because it's basically mine.
yeah,
you
yep.
know,
And I always say, Mr. Seller, everybody wants top dollar for their house, right? Everybody does, right? But every buyer wants a deal. And I'll say, Mr. Seller, my job is to help, bring you and a buyer together, right? To create a win-win situation where you guys are both happy. And then I'll say, you know what? Obviously, there's a reason why your home wasn't selling, and so maybe it is price, right? And so what I've found is, what is the motivation, right? Is it just because you want $2 million for your house? Or is there a real reason why you're selling, right? You're going through a divorce, you're downsizing, you're relocating, job transfer. Because what I was always told, and this is good, right? Motivation always trumps price, right? It always trumps price. So, like, I was out on a listing appointment this week. Matter of fact, it was yesterday. Um, the parents died, so the two brothers inherited the house, right? And when I met with them, they want to start the price a little bit higher than where I would recommend it, right? But the house is vacant and they have to sell, right? So I told them, I said, listen, I'm willing to start the price a little bit higher. However, right, if we go through this first weekend, we're going to know if this price is too high or not, because either A, people are going to come and they're going to tell us it's overpriced, or B, if we don't get a lot of traffic, then we're going to know we're overpriced. And so if that's the case, then I'm going to be making the call to you and we're going to talk about doing a price reduction, right? Here's why I would start a little bit higher in that case, because they have to sell, right? It's not like, oh, well, if it doesn't sell, we'll keep it. No, parents passed away. They've already cleared the house out. It has to sell, right? The brothers want to get paid, right? Now, if I was meeting them and it was a different circumstance, well, we don't really have any motivation. We just hear the market's hot. And if we can get our number, then we'll get it. But Justin, if we can't get 375, then we're absolutely not selling. Well, if they want to list at 375 and the market says 3, I'm not taking that listing.
right.
Just not doing it.
And that's very difficult to do when you're especially new and hungry for business,
Right.
to walk away from a listing. But in the end, I've found, and you can tell me if you found the same thing,
Mhm.
is that number one, it's more of a headache than anything else. Number two, it's
Yeah.
not going to sell. And number three, it's money out of your pocket, not into your
Yep.
pocket.
Exactly. So we pay for professional photos. I have 3 administrators that work for me, so I'm paying them. Like, I'm actually, and I tell them that, like, I'm investing into your listing to get it listed, marketed, and sold. And if I don't feel confident that I can sell it, I'm going to tell you, and I'm not going to take your listing. Back in the day when I was new, I wanted every listing. Just give them all to me. I'll sell them all. And
Right.
then, they get frustrated because you told them, Justin, you told me you could sell it for 400,000. And then they leave you a bad review, right? Justin came in, told me he could do it, and then he couldn't get it done. So I've just changed my whole approach to the business. And here's what I tell them. And again, I think this, because I don't focus on the end result, I think this is how I win 90% of my listing appointments, even more than that, is because I don't care if I get it. I want it, but I don't care if I get it, right? I'll go into an appointment. I'll say, hey, this is what you get when you hire me. This is what I'm going to do. This is where I'll price it at. And, I hope we can work together. But if not, I'm totally okay with that because, and I don't say it like this, but you know what? I'm not going to take your listing overpriced just to get your listing. And I tell them, I say, you'll interview agents who need your business, who are hungry, for business because they don't have any. So they'll take you overpriced. They'll tell you they can sell it for, a number that's not going to sell. And I tell them, like, I don't need your business. I take 10 to 15 listings every month. I sell over 100 homes a year. I want your business, but I'm not desperate and I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear to get it. And honestly, I think I see a shift in their mindset. Like, you know what? That's the type of guy we want to work with.
Yeah, when you present as the honest consultant approach, and there's a phrase that I've heard used and that I've used in the past that, I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later.
Exactly. I
Because
love that. I've never heard that. I'm stealing that one from you.
go for it, R&D the heck out of it.
Yeah, I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
because you approach it. I'm an honest salesperson, and I'm not going to string you along and tell you something just to get your listing. I'd rather
Yeah.
turn you down now than let you down later.
I'm writing that down, by the way. That's a
Write it
good one.
down.
Turn you
I did
down
not
now.
create it, but feel free to rip it off as I did.
Love it.
So going forward with, hitting the phones, let's talk about schedule, because people dream about doing 100 deals a year. That could also be, destroying to a lifestyle and a family,
Right.
because you're working all the time. You're on that hamster wheel, right?
Yep.
So let's talk about if someone's approaching you, and they're saying, I'm at 10, 20 deals a year. I want to get to 100 deals a year because that's the kind of level of business that I want.
Yep.
And what do I need to do in order to achieve that? Like, what does
Yeah.
the daily schedule look like? How should they set up their systems? Give me a sort of broad stroke of what that would look like for someone.
Yeah. So again, I'm so grateful that I started my real estate career with someone like Jeff, because the system was already created. The results were already there. I didn't have to go through this long drawn out process to try to figure out how to sell at a high level. Right when I came into the business, Jeff said, listen, and even so I was in Cleveland yesterday. We had a Glover U conference there, and he said some things and it just brought it back. He says, would you rather be the employer or the employee? And he talked about how when you're a listing agent, when you list homes, you have other agents that are working to sell your home. And so very early on, I learned how to be more of a listing based agent, right? And I did. I worked with buyers in the beginning. I went out and showed them homes. And I remember there was this one specific buyer, showed her a ton of homes. I mean, a ton of homes. And I think because I don't work Sundays, that's one thing that right from the get-go, from year one, I work 6 days a week. Sundays we go to church. It's family day. I don't work on Sundays. And I think this lady was mad because she wanted to see homes on a Sunday and I couldn't show her, and she fired me. And I'm like, I just showed you like 30 homes and I couldn't show you a home on a Sunday because I'm at church with my family. She didn't care. She fired me. And I'm like, I am not working with buyers anymore. And so I went back to, Jeff, and he's like, this is why we use showing agents, right? And so right from the get-go, I started using a showing agent, showing assistant, whatever you want to call it, to show all my homes, right? And so, I pay them a 20% commission. They do all the showings. I do the buyer consultation. I do all the negotiating on the contracts and everything. And then I think, so I started in February of 2014. By July, I had hired my first assistant because I knew, like, if I'm going to sell at a high level, I need leverage. I need someone doing all my paperwork for me. I need someone answering the phone during the day when I'm on appointments. And while I can't list homes and do showings at the same time, so I need leverage to have somebody showing my homes for me. And then not only that, I have 4 kids, right? So my kids are in sports and all of these things. And so I learned very early on that if I was going to produce at a high level, I had to have leverage. So I don't show homes. I don't do paperwork. I just show up and I do the things that I'm good at. I lead generate, I go on appointments, I get contracts signed. And so when you scale to the next level, and if someone's asking you, well, how do I get there? You have to have lead generation in your calendar every day. You have to, right? And I was speaking at a conference not too long ago when I was sharing with this room of agents. I said, if you look at your pipeline and it's empty right now, or if you're not happy with the amount of money you're making right now, or you're struggling in the business, I have the solution for you. You're not talking to enough people every day. And if you talk to people every single day, whether it's for sale by owners, whether it's expireds, whether it's your database, you're doing circle prospecting, you will do more business. The law of average says, if I talk to enough people, I will eventually get a buyer or a seller to work with me. And so you have to be talking to people every day. And then as your business scales, because it will, once you start talking to people every day, that's when you need to create leverage, whether it's a transaction coordinator doing your paperwork, whether it's hiring a full-time assistant, or whether it's, having somebody show the homes for you. It's the only way you can scale and still offer great service, because you can only do so much as one individual and have a life.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it comes to a showing agent, let's say someone wants to follow that advice, and how does it work to, to entice somebody? It's difficult for us because we're very entrepreneurial, right?
Right,
And there are some people with an employee mindset, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's who they
right,
are. But
right.
somebody to come on to your team, what is the value add as a showing agent? So I'm only going to be making 20% on whatever showings you kind of throw my way. Are they in charge of prospecting as well? Do they also take listings, or are they just strictly showings? How does that work for someone?
Yep. So it depends, right? So primarily the showing agent role or the showing assistant role is primarily just that. And because, I do a lot of business, so I have a lot of buyers, it typically keeps that person busy. We will obviously allow them to work with their own buyers if they want to work with their own buyers, but primarily that's what they're doing, right? They're primarily focusing on the showing assistant model, and you got to obviously have somebody that appreciates and desires that role, right? And so, because some people want to be the listing agent, some people would rather work with their own clients, but then you do have some people who primarily want to be a showing agent. So that's 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 the type of person we're looking for when it comes to that role, is someone who's willing to just show homes. That's it. They're not writing contracts, they're not negotiating, they don't really like the full sales side of it. They just primarily want to show homes.
And those people generally aren't in charge of generating leads, like you said.
Correct.
They're given the business.
Correct. Yep.
So, and that's usually coming from the clients that are listing their homes from you. They need somewhere to live.
Yep. Or I have a buyer, someone that says, "Hey, Justin, I'm looking to purchase a home," and I always do a buyer consultation with them, sit down, go through the process. Like I just, buddy from high school, and I haven't even seen him in 20 years, but we're friends on Facebook. He's like, "Hey, I need to buy a house." I'm like, okay, great. Let's get you pre-approved and let's schedule you for a buyer consultation. I take them through 30 to 45 minutes. Here's what's going on in the market. Let's find out what you're looking to accomplish. And I set the expectation of, all right, this is how the process is going to go. And then, oh, by the way, I'm going to have Jennifer, my showing assistant, call you. She's basically going to be your point of contact. She's the one that you're going to schedule your showings with. She's the one that's going to show you the homes. And when you're ready to make an offer, I hop back in. We talk about an offer. We submit it.
Okay. Great. This is all very helpful for people because we, as we go along in our careers, we tend to forget what it was like to get started. And
Yeah.
so for people
Yep.
that are kind of in the beginning or want to get to that next level, it's
Yep.
important to be able to show them the path for it, right?
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of an assistant, you mentioned hiring an assistant. What sort of duties would an assistant be typically responsible for, and how would you communicate and set up systems with that assistant so that your business is now running more efficiently so you can spend your time on money-making activities?
Yep, that's a great question. So I currently have three assistants. One is my executive assistant. He also really helps us with our operations side of the business, and he handles basically getting all of my listing packages ready. He does lead follow up for me, even sets appointments for me. He also handles, just my voicemail, my emails, anything that I need him to do from a personal level. He handles all of that for me. My wife, she's our listing coordinator, our client coordinator. She handles, once we have a listing ready to go, she contacts the client. She's the first point of contact for new listings. She's scheduling the pictures. She's coordinating the lockbox drop off. She's handling, ordering the signs, the pictures, basically setting up that initial listing expectation. And then it gets handed off to Stacy, who's more of like a transaction coordinator, and she's basically sending the listing paperwork to get signed. She's the one that's basically the point of contact once the contract or once the listing goes under contract and is active. She's putting it into the MLS. She's writing the remarks. She's putting the pictures in, and from the listing all the way to the close. Once we get an offer, she's the point of contact. She's communicating with the other agent. She's communicating with the lender. She's coordinating the inspections. She's basically the person answering the phone from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. every single day. And so we kind of all have our different roles in the process. And we've never had a review below 5 stars because we're delivering that experience, and it's not just, well, I can't get a hold of Justin because he's never available. Well, I'm on appointments all day, right? And so they call Stacy. Well, why is it taking so long to get my pictures ordered? Well, Joy's handling that, right? Or, what Juan will do is he will assist even Stacy or Joy, if need be, but primarily he's helping grow the business. He's helping me grow the business side. He's helping me with lead generation, things like that, while they handle more of the transaction side of it.
So this sounds a lot less like being a real estate agent than it does being a business owner, right? And that's a
Correct.
mentality that a lot of people don't have in this business.
Right.
I find, and when you do, you're able to take it to the next level and scale and leverage off of other people. So let's paint a picture. Let's just use easy numbers. Let's say somebody's pulling in $1 million GCI a year.
Yep.
Okay, let's look at it like a business owner. So you've got $1 million coming in, but now you've got employees, you've got all this stuff. How does that break down? What are you walking away with at the end of the day? Like give people a broad picture on something like that.
Yeah. It comes down to, what is most important to that individual, right? Because I work with a lot of great agents who are happy just selling 30 to 40 homes a year. But I've also found that most agents, I'd say at least 90% of agents, they work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, they just grind, and they don't really have a life. And for me, balance is important, right? Being able to lay down my head on the pillow at night, not feel overwhelmed and stressed, is important to me. And so, even if let's say out of $1 million in commission, I'm bringing home 600,000 or 700,000. To me, I'm okay, not making the full amount, because I want to be able to have peace, right? I want to be able to, go to my kids' games. I want to be able to take a vacation every quarter, which we do, right? I want to be able to, feel like I'm not strapped or, completely, enslaved to this business. And unfortunately, this business, if you don't create that structure, have that leverage, and like you said, have a different type of mindset, this business will chew you up and spit you out, right? I mean, high blood pressure, stress, not having any structure in your business, clients calling you at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I just learned structure. Going back to, we talked about schedule, having a schedule, right? Treating this, I don't want to say treating it like a job, but, I feel like most agents are just all over the place, right? They have no structure to their daily schedule. And again, the business controls them. They don't control the business. And I believe that when you look at it from a business mindset, you create systems, you create processes, you hire people around you, you can actually do more than you could if you were trying to do it, all on your own. And for me, I want to be able to not feel completely overwhelmed and frustrated and have no life because, I have no structure and I don't have people around me.
Right, exactly. Well, listen. We've covered a lot of bases here
Yeah.
from how you started in the business, cold calling, the
Yep.
down nitty gritty of that, and
Yep.
sort of building a business mindset. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you think would be beneficial for the people to hear?
Absolutely. One of the things I think that when, and it's not just in business and in real estate, but just in business or life in general, a lot of times people will see someone succeeding at a high level, say, I wish I, was like that, or man, I'm going through a ton of stuff in life, and life is hard, and you know, uh, you know, if I didn't have the struggles that I had, then I'd be successful too. And I'm very open about my story and the things that I've gone through in life, and I share my story so that people can be relatable, right? Not, oh my gosh, he's the guy selling 100 plus homes a year. He's on podcasts and featured in magazines, and he's got it all together. I wish I had it all together. And I think it's a misconception when we see people succeeding. A lot of times we only see their highlight reels, right? And social media will do that, right? Wow, man, he's just always succeeding, and everything just seems like it's great and this and that, because it's easy for us to show people the good stuff.
Right.
And they're like, well, man, if I could only have it together like him. And that's just such a false lie, because we all struggle, right? We all go through hardship. We all have life happen to us. And so just to back up a little bit, most people don't know this, but when I share it, people are like, oh my gosh, like I dropped out of high school. between the ages of 17 and 19, I acquired 8 misdemeanors and a felony, all drug and alcohol related. I was an honor roll student. My grandfather was an attorney. He was going to give me his law firm, if I just stayed out of trouble, and ended up just getting caught up as a teenager, peer pressure, started doing drugs and drinking at a very young age. And, I went from being an honor roll student to being a felon. I sold drugs to an undercover cop between the ages of 17 and 19. 13 arrested 13 times. I got a big scar on my eye. I was beat up by the police, overdosed, almost died, lost my driver's license for 10 years. And then at the age of 19, I became a Christian, and it changed my whole life, right? Started, sharing my story, became a motivational speaker. I speak in high schools to kids. I work with people and I tell them, like, it doesn't matter how you start, it matters how you finish. And so my past doesn't define who I am. But then even that time period of, when we were in the mortgage business, we went through hardship, right? When I arrived, right, I grew up in a middle class home. My parents divorced when I was 2. Never had any, anything special. We were good. We never went without, but it wasn't, anything to talk about. So I struggled financially growing up. There was, so when I started to get these bigger commission checks in the mortgage business and I made my first 6 figures, I thought I arrived. I mean, I went out and bought a brand new Lincoln, brought my wife a brand new Chrysler. We bought a house, I bought $1,000 watch. We were eating, we'd go out and have lamb chops and lobster tail. We thought we were living the life, right?
Yeah.
And again, little did I know that it was all going to collapse very soon. I mean, we lost everything. We here in Michigan, we have our foreclosure laws is when the house foreclosed, we have a 6-month redemption period. So you're allowed to stay in your home 6 months after your home forecloses, and you can either redeem it, you can sell it, or you can just wait until, you can't wait anymore. And that's what we did because we didn't have any more money. The sheriff literally had to come and drop the dumpster in our driveway and begin clearing our stuff out. And I remember the day that we couldn't afford a moving company. We couldn't even afford a moving truck. I had a buddy who had a Dodge Durango, and we literally loaded our whole house into his truck and moved it like so many different trips to the new house. And the day that we had to be out, my wife broke out in hives from top to bottom. Her whole body had all these hives all over it. She had to go to the emergency room because she was under such stress that we were losing everything. And I remember how hard that was. And then we moved into this rental home. And again, I was just so entrepreneurial focused. I didn't want to go get a real job because I thought it was like throwing in the towel. So started building my short sale and loan mod business in the morning and the day. And then I delivered pizzas at night. And we couldn't make it, right? So we lost that house to eviction. And then we had to move in with my mom. We moved into her house. It was me and my wife and 3 kids. We had to live on her basement floor. We had to get on food stamps. I mean, it was tough, right? And I looked back on this period of my life and I said, I'm never going to let that happen again. And I think, even when it comes to prospecting or just being successful in general, right? So many people have these fears, or so many people look at their circumstances or the obstacles that they're going through in life, and they make excuses why they're not willing to go through the process and push through the hardship and be successful, right? Because being successful is hard, right? It's hard work. You get beat up, right? You have days where you just don't feel like it. I mean, you go through things in life where you're just like, man, I don't want to push through and get to the other side. And I always say, it's hard to be successful, but Lorne, it's hard not to be, right? It's hard when you're barely making it. It's hard going through the struggle. And I just say you have to pick your heart, right? You're going to go through the hard to get where you want to be in life, or you're going to go through the hard and you're going to have the regrets. But either way, it's going to be hard. And so, I mean, even since that mark, I mean, I had my own independent brokerage, and you know what? It was a failure, right? I had agents that came, I had almost 40 people working for me, had a property management company, things were going good. Then all of a sudden, everybody started to leave, started getting lawsuits on the property management company because I had people running it, and things weren't going right, and just everything just kind of collapsed again in life. And I remember there was a time, where I was on my office floor. And people working for me outside of my office door, but I've got the door closed, and I'm like on my floor crying, right? Because everything around me is just falling apart. I have no idea why my vision is not coming to pass, and I have no idea why people are leaving. And I'm just like, man, this just sucks. What's going on here? And I remember there's a picture of Tom Brady, because I'm a big football guy. The Super Bowl, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, when New England was playing the Falcons, and they were down by like 4 touchdowns, like at the end of the third quarter. And there was a picture of Tom Brady on the bench with his head down, and it's just who knows what he was thinking, who knows what was going through his mind, but he was getting crushed, right? And whatever he was thinking or going through in that moment, he just came out of that sideline, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl, right? They came back and went into overtime, and they won the Super Bowl, and it was the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. And I remember like feeling like, man, I'm down big, and it's at the end of the third quarter. And I said, but you know what? I'm getting through this. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this. We were going to be evicted from our office. We had a $5,000 office, monthly office expense. And there's only 3 of us in it. And I'm like, I'm not quitting. I'm not throwing in the towel. I'm going to figure this out. And so I took this picture of Tom Brady, and it showed like the score in the third quarter and then the final score. And I started posting these all over my office, right? To remind me, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Ended up coming out, overcoming all the hardship, got through that, ended up getting out of the lease early. They let me out. We were able to end up paying the amount of money that was owed. Had a great year last year, had my best year ever. I sold 125 homes last year and did 31 million in personal volume, crushed it. And then this year joined EXP. And honestly, man, things have never been better. But I say all that to say, if you're an agent right now and you're watching this podcast, you're going through hardship. It's a part of the process, right? It's a part of the process. You're going to go through tough times. You're going to go through hard times, but that's what builds the character that you need to be successful. That's what builds maturity. That's what builds you into the person to be able to handle what it is and steward what it is that you really ultimately want. I'm a Christian, right? And so there's a lot of great principles in the Bible. Even if you're not religious, you don't even have to believe in God. There's so many great principles in there. And there's a verse in the book of James where it says, count it all joy when you go through various trials and tribulations, because it's testing your faith to produce endurance in you. And then it says, let endurance have its way so that you can build the character necessary to become the person that you're really meant to be. And that really changed me because it allows me to look at hardship and tough times and trials and tribulations in life totally different. I look at it as, this is a part of the process for me to become the person I need to be so that I can accomplish the things that I've set out to do. Whereas most people from a mindset look at it like, man, why can't I just catch a break? Why does everything in life have to be so hard? Why can't I just get over the hump? Why do I have to struggle financially? Why do I have to, have problems in my marriage? Why are my kids always acting up? And they just look at all the negative rather than looking at what can I learn through this and how can I become a better person through it so that I can become the person that I need to be successful. And honestly, that's my story. I've been through hell and back multiple times, but guess what? I've made a decision that I'm going to win no matter what, and I'm never going to quit because quitting is not an option.
That is the winning mentality that you need, especially in a sales business, sales industry, entrepreneurial spirit, right? We study, and I'm big for, reading and listening to books and people's stories. If you study the most successful people in the world in any industry, I don't care if it's sports, I don't care if it's business, whatever it is, they have gone through something in their life, and
Yep.
they are going to make sure that that never happens again, or they have
Yep.
to prove to
Yep.
themselves and everyone around them that they're better than who people thought they were from where they started. It's all
Yep.
about overcoming your issues and, like you said, learning from your experience. We've all gone through things. I mean, people listening to the podcast, they know my story. I don't need to say it, but ultimately, I did 3 deals my first year. I had 1 kid with a second kid on the way. My wife wasn't
Yep.
working, and that was brutal. Second year, like I was like, if I can only do 10, I don't care if it's rentals, but if I do 10, I'm moving in the right direction.
Right.
So I did 12, I think, the second year, which was like 3 sales and 2 leases, or 3 sales and like 7 leases or something.
Yeah.
But I knew I was moving in the right direction. And then I made like, what was it, like 30 something $1,000 that year. It was brutal. We had to rent out our house. Otherwise we were going to have to sell it. everyone goes through these things, but
Yep.
guess what? Third year, you learn what to do. You
Yep.
you you build on it. I jumped from 30,000 something GCI, which I still kill myself over laughing about, to 180. Like
Yep.
that's a huge growth. And then I kept growing from there because you build on it and you build character and you go through
Yep.
those struggles and hardships. So you're
Absolutely.
right on. I'm with you 100%. Thanks
Yep.
so much for sharing. My brother in EXP, I came to EXP
Yes.
in October as well.
Yep.
Hey, listen, all companies, they have something going for them, but EXP is something very interesting and special. Don't want to
Yes, it
harp on
is.
that too much because, like I said, this isn't about that. But thank you so much for sharing your story, for sharing
Yes.
your knowledge and your experience. I appreciate you collaborating, and I hope we stay in touch. Anybody who wants to send you referrals, tell everybody again the area that you service and how to get a
Yep.
hold of you.
Yep. So I cover basically the full Southeast Michigan area. I mean, the Detroit metro area and all the surroundings. We cover it all. And I learned early on, you go where the business is. And so we've got coverage all over the Southeast part of Michigan. You guys can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Clubhouse, or you can email me, Justin at the just. I don't want to say the Justin at JustinFordTeam.com. And yeah, I'd love to work with you guys. Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you again for joining us. Everybody, please reach out to Justin if you have any referrals in that area. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, guys.